ver también
Te escuchamos bien y vemos bien tu presentación, así que muchas gracias, puedes partir.
y pueden verme también o no.
Sí, te vemos a ti también.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Con un poco de problemas de técnicas, porque estoy en Colorado, en Estados Unidos, entonces tenemos un poco de distancia. Pero buen día a todos. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Es un placer estar con ustedes aquí virtualmente. Quería agradecer a Chile GBC y especialmente a María Fernanda y a Gaby por esa oportunidad, por esta invitación. Estamos muy contentos como una organización global de promoción de sostenibilidad en el sector inmobiliario sobre el progreso de taxonomía verde en América Latina y en Chile y el rol de Chile GBC en ese proceso en Chile. Alguna gente quizás sabe que hace algunos meses estamos en una asociación formal con Chile GBC y hacemos un par de iniciativas juntos. Y hoy quería decirles un poco sobre GRESP, quiénes somos, um, qué hacemos, cómo promovemos sostenibilidad en el mundo, uh, qué, qué ofrecemos de beneficios a nuestros participantes, qué hacemos en América Latina y qué también hacemos en Chile. Y voy a hacer esta presentación, como Gaby dijo, en inglés, porque es mucho más fácil para mí explicar todas las cosas en inglés. Hablo un poco en español, pero no tan bien para hacer esa presentación, me parece. Los diapositivos son en español, pero yo voy a explicar cosas en inglés, voy a hacerlo despacio. Entonces, empezamos. What is GRESB? Some of you may know a little bit about us, some may know more, some may not know almost nothing. To bring us all to the same level, to bring us all to the same speed, I thought that I would tell you a little bit who we are, where we come from, what we are after. GRESP actually initially stood for Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark. That's why there's this acronym, GRESB. But we are the global ESG, environmental, social, and governance standard for the real estate sector and also for the sector of infrastructure. We'll be concentrating on real estate today because this is the subject of this conference. But we also do infrastructure, and we are also a strategic planning tool for many, for example, for adherence to different types of regulatory schemes, which I guess this is the subject of the conference. GRESP is an organization with a mission. We have been driven by objectives, and our objectives is to provide transparent quality data, environmental, social, and governance data to the investors, to the allocators of capital in financial markets, in the investment markets. What do? We collect, we validate, we qualify, we score, compare ESG data, we bring the entrepreneurial intelligence, we provide the participation tools, and we also provide solutions to the different types of regulatory schemes, including green taxonomies. GRESP is a company with a vision. Our vision is to connect the stakeholders. And what I'm presenting to you is a simplified version of an ecosystem that GRESP has been able to create. But as you can imagine, as you know, to create any kind of ecosystem, there has to be stickiness for different types of stakeholders to be in that ecosystem. So there have to be some benefits for them to first attract them to that ecosystem, and some benefits for them to stay in that ecosystem. So just to kind of give you an idea what's GRASP about in terms of this ecosystem, we have to go back a few years back. We have to understand a little bit the history, a little bit what triggered the creation of this ecosystem. Think about 2009, so a little bit more than 15 years ago, midst of the financial crisis. Some of you may remember that. There's been loads of damage to the value of different types of investors, including the pension plans. And the pension plans are typically the ones that are one of the most conservative ones, because they have to protect the value of the capital for the pensioners and for the future pensioners. And they obviously interested also in value appreciation of all this investment. That's why they allocate this capital. They were allocating also to real estate funds and portfolios. And some of them lost money in the process, in this financial crisis. And they realized at that point that getting information only about the financial standing of those real estate funds and portfolios is not sufficient, that they should actually have more transparency, more visibility into non-financial risks and opportunities that fall behind or beyond the financial statements. They had that vision to create some kind of an assessment, some kind of a framework that would be material from the standpoint. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. But they didn't have resources, know-how, capabilities, internal, to design this type of a framework. So they decided, and these were three big, the largest pension plans, two largest pension plans in the Netherlands and one large pension plan in the United Kingdom. They decided to commission the work on this assessment to a prestigious, recognized university in the Netherlands called University of Maastricht. University of Maastricht put together this framework assessment or a questionnaire, however we want to call it. Very thorough, very extensive, focused specifically on real estate, so specifically dedicated to this sector, and did so with this materiality angle, which was asked by those investors, those institutional investors, those pension plans to incorporate in. By materiality, it meant focus only on those aspects that may cause value destruction. So how do we mitigate risk, in other words, and also focus on these other areas where we can create value, where we can unlock value creation. So how can we grow capital by allocating that capital to those real estate funds and portfolios? This is what this questionnaire, this assessment was based on. So the questionnaire was ready. What was missing was the entity to manage that. And that entity was created and it was called GRASP. And this is that circle in the middle. So this circle in the middle stands for us, for this organization that actually is the administrator of this assessment, or we can be also called the guardian of this assessment. We are the intermediary between the institutional investors that were the godfathers or godmothers of this whole initiative and the managers of funds, of real estate funds and portfolios. So think about what potentially the benefits for these players in these ecosystems are. Because what happened right away when this assessment was created, the institutional investors subjected the fund managers, real estate fund managers, with that assessment. So the fund managers had to actually answer to that questionnaire as well as they could for the institutional investor to benefit from this scheme. So what are the benefits for these different players? Institutional investors, I think it's pretty straightforward. They were the initiators of creating a GRASP assessment. They wanted to use this tool to make more complete more holistic investment decisions. So not just to look at the financial information and data, but also look at the non-financial information, documentation, data, metrics, etc. And based on that, be able to make better risk-adjusted return ratios for the capital allocation decisions. This is what they have been using it since the inception. You can think of this group as information takers. They use these reports, the GRESB reports, to make better investment decisions. So what's there for this group, which is called, in our terminology, in the GRESB terminology, GRESB participants, member participants. These are, again, managers of funds and portfolios, real estate funds and portfolios. They actually do the hard work. They are being subjected to that questionnaire, which is very thorough. And they have to provide all this information, all this data, all these metrics and documentation for GRESB in return to provide them with a report, which then they can use, for example, to communicate with the institutional investors. These participants, they can also use all kinds of analytical tools that are available in our portal based on all this, what they provide to GRESB and all that the GRESB processes. So what are the benefits for this group? There's quite a few. And I'm going to be talking only about the typical benefits for them. The first benefit is that they do not have to reinvent the wheel. This most thorough, comprehensive assessment focused on sustainability, specifically dedicated to real estate, has been created, was created actually 15 years ago, was tested in fire, and they can use it as a tool, action tool, from day one. So they don't have to come up what's really important in terms of sustainability in real estate. It's already done. If they want to do more, they can do more. But the baseline, the consensus has been created. So it's about identifying those risks and opportunities that matter, especially for the investors that allocate to real estate funds and portfolios. And this ability to identify those risks and opportunities helps those managers to measure, start measuring, then monitor over time those risks and opportunities, and then manage them better. If you don't know, for example, what your energy efficiency is or energy consumption, how can you improve the efficiency over time? Ultimately, we're talking about sometimes very tangible examples of what's really important in that in the management, in the operations of real estate funds and portfolios. So that's the first benefit. The second benefit is about the time frame. It's about planning. If I already know about what risks and opportunities I'm potentially exposed to, so which risks I have to mitigate, which opportunities I can take advantage of, then it's a question, which of those risks are the gravest, which pose the most of a threat, which ones I should address right away, because I didn't even maybe know about them, and now I know. And I obviously I'm trying to be as best portfolio manager as I can be, and I want to resolve them as soon as possible. So it's about building this planning. What do I want to do and can do because of my obviously limited resources and know-how in the short term, medium term, and long term, and what opportunities I can take advantage of to grow the value of my portfolio, because that's what I'm interested in, and this is what my investors are interested in. So that's the second benefit. And so far, I've been telling you only about sort of like a look in the mirror, right? Like, it's what's there for those managers, just for them, just to see themselves. So it's the self sort of assessment. But GRESB is also about the benchmark. We've created a benchmark. So it's not just about how I look, which is super useful for me as a manager, but also how I look versus the others, how I look versus my peers and versus my competitors, what they do better than I, what I do better than them, where am I coming short, what I should potentially focus on to attract the most positive attention to me. as a manager, as my fund, and so on. So it's about comparing, benchmarking. That's what GRESB also offers. So that's the benefit number 3. And the fourth benefit, typical, out of those typical benefits, is that GRESB is also a global platform for best practices in sustainability in real estate. We are present in 80 countries. And for, let's say, a participant in Chile, there may be a benefit of learning from some other players that may be operating on the other side of the world, to pull from their examples and to apply the best practices that are, in some other parts of the world. These are not even, Chilean competitors. These are some kind of distant peers, to apply them in Chile, and in the region, to promote the best practices locally or regionally. So it's about learning, education that GRESB as a global platform provides. So these are, I'd say, the most basic 4 benefits for this group, for what we call member participants. What are the use cases for these players? What do they use the GRESB for? And I'm also going to focus on the 3 most basic use cases. The first and the most obvious use case is this, what I kind of signaled before. This whole framework was created by the institutional investors to make better investment decisions. So these players, the fund managers, they use GRESB as a tool to communicate with the institutional investors. It's obviously much more powerful for them to present their progress, their standing, according to GRESB, third-party, independent, unbiased opinion in the form of the report, than to talk about themselves, which is inherently biased. So this is an opportunity to use the GRESB reports, this global standard, without any competition globally, to communicate to the institutional investors, to attract the capital, positive attention, and sometimes to retain the capital in these funds. So that's the first use case. Many of our participants, managers, they start from the angle of attracting capital, but then they realize that there's so much that they have learned through the process about all these non-financial risks and opportunities, about how to build more resilient, stronger, healthier company. And they're obviously very interested in progressing with that, because they're interested in ensuring that they're not going to risk any damage to their company, to their portfolio, and they're also interested in growing the value of that portfolio, to making it stronger as a firm, healthier. And this is how they also use GRESB. So this is the second use case. And the third use case, which may be the most important for this conference, is that many of our participants also use GRESB as a preparatory tool for adherence to any type of regulatory frameworks or guidelines, to be ready ahead of the curve with any type of regulation. So, because typically doing so in advance with some time ahead guarantees doing it better and cheaper, and perhaps taking advantage of the time to get ahead of the competition. So this is what GRESB also provides, this tool to prepare, to position as a manager to adhere to any type of regulatory schemes in different parts of the world. So that's a simplified version of the ecosystem. We're going to come back to that. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about this evolution of GRESB. I mentioned that we started in the midst of the financial crisis. The first phase was in 2009, from 2009 to 2014. This was a phase of market development. This is how we call it. And from then, so there was a lot of education that we have to put into the market to gain any type of traction. And then from then, we moved to the second phase. And this was adoption by the industry, roughly from 2015 and 2019. And the third phase that we are right now in started roughly just before COVID, during COVID. And it's a rapid expansion and the rapid adoption of the GRESB framework across the board. So it's a geographic expansion. We're moving to more and more countries, and we also intensify our presence and adoption within those countries that we already there. And we grow in every year. So let's go back a little bit to this ecosystem that I drew in this two slides before. This is more of a thorough analysis of that ecosystem. GRESB began as this circle is in the middle. We are sort of this glue. We are the anchor to the ecosystem because all these players, all the stakeholders need us for this thing to work. So let's start from this square. Institutional investors. I mentioned it started from 3 pension plans, 2 from Holland, 1 from the UK. Now we have over 150 big pension plans, not just from Europe, but also from Asia, also from Oceania, from Australia, New Zealand. We have also big, very renowned, biggest, in fact, pension plans in Canada, in the United States, and soon to be, hopefully, in Latin America. But this is not only pension plans that are in this group right now. We also have foundations that use GRESB to allocate the capital to real estate fund managers. We also have academic endowments that use GRESB for that reason. We have asset managers that allocate to real estate that want to use GRESB to inform the decisions better. So, and we also have banks. And this is sort of like the newest development. Many of our bank participants, they use GRESB to identify trends within real estate in this non-financial side or sustainability part, however we want to call it, to identify and pick certain key performance indicators, KPIs. And they use those KPIs to define, to calibrate the interest rate premium. So, for example, provide green financing or sustainability financing to the entire fund portfolios to the fund managers. So this is what's in this institutional investors grouping. Keep in mind that it's only officially affiliated institutional investors, and there are some institutional investors that still use GRESB for the same reason, but they, for different reasons, for example, political, they cannot be officially affiliated with GRESB. So, in fact, this number is much larger. And there's anecdotally, perhaps in one-on-ones I could share with you that in Latin America, many of those institutional investors use GRESB to inform their investment decisions. Let's move to this quadrant. And this quadrant is very important, especially who the host is today. So what we call this stakeholders industry partners. Industry partners are organizations that have in their mission some kind of synergy with the GRESB's mission. So GRESB's success is their success as well. So for example, Green Building Councils, Chile GBC. That's why Chile GBC has become an industry partner of GRESB. So we officially collaborate. And the logo, by the way, is available on our website if you want to check it. But this is not only green building councils. This is also, for example, associations of pension plans. These are also the organizations that promote different certifications, such as BRE, that promotes BREEAM, and many, many others. So these are this type of players in the system. This quadrant is what we call partner organizations. So think about the consultants that help GRESB to be participants. So they help those fund managers, for portfolio managers, get into GRESB, because sometimes they're not ready. They don't know, they don't have internal resources to deal with this whole process, and they need help, external help. And those consultants provide this service. And we, in fact, have some representatives of consultants in Chile as well. This group has grown to, it's actually, this number is probably already outdated. There's more than 150 of them right now. And they are very important in the process of getting participants into GRESP, and then to progress over time, to improve over time, because it's a multi-year process. So this is the consultant. This is the consultants. Just one more word about this grouping is that by becoming a consultant, joining the GRESP partnership program, GRESP indicates that these players actually are capable, they have the required expertise to help our participants, and they have access to the GRESP resources to actually do so. So that's why it's important to get affiliated for those consultants when they think about helping to be GRESP participants or existing GRESP participants. And perhaps the most important quadrant is this, what we call the GRESP benchmark. So this is the number of our participants. So these are all these real estate funds and portfolios, large and small, all around the world as of 2024. This is a number of these funds. Some of those funds are very large. This could be publicly listed REITs with hundreds or thousands of buildings in their portfolios. And some of them are private equity firms with zero assets. But they are about to acquire some assets, or they want to develop some assets. And they still participate in GRESP because they can see the value of doing the right thing, of putting their companies, their portfolios on the right pathway, and thinking about all these aspects that may guarantee the preservation of the existence and being able to thrive and being able to secure capital, etc. So in this group, we have all kinds of players, but the biggest one counts for one, the smallest one also counts for one, 2,223 as of 2024. And this slide is about the growth and the historical growth of GRESP and what we actually cover right now. So we started, as I mentioned, 2009. The first result appeared in 2010. We started with 198 participants. And you can see these green bars, they're growing every year and accelerating. As I mentioned to you, 2020 was this expansion phase. It's accelerating as of 2020. And we finished 2024 with 2,223 real estate participants. We are present in all 15 sectors of real estate. And these participants manage over 208,000 buildings globally. We are present in 80 markets, so 80 countries. So think about a large and complex one, such as, let's say, the US, that counts for one. And also Costa Rica counts for also one. And in terms of the coverage of how much those managers manage, is in English, 7 trillion gross asset value. And different types of players. So private equity, publicly listed REITs, joint ventures, direct investments, government. We also growing a database, which we're trying to utilize to educate the market, which we can talk about maybe on some other occasions. But as you can see, it's grown also exponentially. This slide is about our investor members. So this institutional capital, some of those institutions that represent over 22 trillion in English in assets under management. Some of that is allocated to real estate. And they use GRESP for those decisions of allocating to real estate. And as I mentioned, over 150 of them are officially affiliated with GRESP and some not, but they still manage assets, which we cannot quote here, and they also allocate. So some of those names may be super familiar. Think about, I don't know, JP Morgan, CBRE, CalPERS, Brookfield, UBS, BlackRock, like really household names. These are our investor members. And this slide shows a few of the logos of some of the participants. So some of those fund managers that supply GRESP with the funds, one or more funds. And again, quite a few of those managers are household names, very famous big names, such as Aris, such as CBRE, such as LaSalle, such as Kilroy, such as BlackRock, such as Blackstone, and many, many more. And I can tell you also that some of those participants, some of those managers, they supply GRESB with multiple funds for assessments. So off the top of my head, CBRE supplies GRESB with 97 funds every year. I mean, changes, right? Like it usually grows. So 97 funds as of last year, as far as I can remember. Let's move on. What do we do in Latin America? What's maybe the most important for you to hear? I'm responsible for Latin America. And I'm very proud of the progress that we do in the region. And we involved in a bunch of countries right now. Some are progressing faster than the others. Some obviously are bigger, some smaller than the others. But we're doing a lot of work. Where do we do some work? We are present in Mexico. We are present in Costa Rica. We are present in Colombia. We are present in Chile, obviously. We are present in Brazil. We are working with Peru, we are working with Panama, we are working with Guatemala, and we're expanding to other markets such as Uruguay, Argentina, and so on. There's been a lot of progress in these markets. The adoption rate is very fast in general. I'm very happy about how keen people to hear about the global sustainability standard for real estate in Latin America, and how keen they are to adopt those standards to improve their practices and operation in different markets. I'm also super happy, and I would like to tell you that we have some representatives from Chile. Territoria started with us in 2022, if I can remember, and they've done incredible progress. We welcomed Eurocorp, or Eurogroup, in 2023, and they've also made incredible progress. And just this last year, 2024, we welcomed Red Megacentrum. And they all doing incredible work, and there's been huge progress in terms of the sustainability practices, awareness about it, education, monitoring, and then management of this. So Latin America is a very fast growing region. In fact, faster growing than most of other regions globally. This slide is a depiction of our process. The evaluation is very systematic and cyclical in nature. In terms of systematic, we follow the ISO standard. So we're very kind of precise and methodological in terms of our approach. And we're cyclical in nature. This process is annual in nature. We assess the portfolios every year to track progress, to be able to manage that progress, to improve practices over time. It's a multi-year project. Sustainability is by its very nature a multi-year endeavor. In terms of the process, in other words, we start from the assets, so from the actual buildings. We collect the information, for example, on energy consumption, on waste generation, on greenhouse gas emissions, on water consumption, on the efficiencies, on the certification, on the asset level, on the building level, and we aggregate this information to the portfolio level, because this is what the investor care about. This is what GRESB is about, the portfolio level. But we aggregate it from the asset level, from the buildings. So if somebody has, 10 buildings in the portfolio, we're asking questions about each individual building, how they do on all these different data and metrics to aggregate it to the portfolio level. And then this information is aggregated, to a portfolio, which can be a private equity portfolio, could be a listed REIT, Fibra, example. And then this information goes to the owners of those assets in the form of a report, which they can do a lot of things with, which I mentioned to you in a little bit about a moment ago. Other way to look at this is this pyramid, this pyramidal structure. So we start from the bottom. We start with operators of the assets because they are the closest to the assets. They know those assets the best. They many times collect, organize data and metrics. They pass it on to the managers of those investments or managers of those portfolios. Though those ones may know more about the governance aspects, how they operate, as a portfolio. So there's lots of questions that they also address. And then this information flows further in the form of the report to the investors and to the lenders to attract the best possible financing. And what's not depicted here on the slide, it's not just the capital markets that those reports flow to, but also, as I mentioned, government regulations, right? It helps with the regulations, with the adherence to the regulations. So that's the process in other way, explained in the other way. There's much more to it, but I think it's sufficient to kind of mention that like this at this point. In Latin America, I mentioned to you the region grows faster than the other regions. We're growing at a 15% rate. It was the last year percent growth. Obviously, the base is growing, so we have more participants. So sustaining that growth rate is harder and harder, but at the same time, the adoption rate is staggeringly high, and there's lots of interest from the region, lots of appetite for education, lots of appetite for understanding the best practices and adoption of those best practices to improve, to prepare for the regulation, again, to attract investors, whether it be domestic investors that use GRESB many times, they're not going to tell you, but they use sometimes, and also international investors. And there's many international investors that actually rely on GRESB. So 50% growth rate. Very proud of this, what's going on in Latin America, and we're looking forward to further growth in Chile and in the region. And with this, I'd like to pause and say thank you again for the opportunity to be invited to this conference, to have a few minutes to share about what we do, talk about this global standard that we are, what the process is, the benefits to different types of stakeholders, the work that we do with different types of stakeholders, and our progress in LATAM and also in Chile specifically. I'm obviously happy to meet one-on-one with you all. If you're interested to learn more, if you have some questions, I'll be happy to spend some time. Obviously, you have different types of angles, different types of interests, you represent different types of companies, but we can sit together and, if you're interested, address any type of your concerns or questions, how potentially collaboration with GRESB may be of benefit to your companies and yourselves. Thanks again to Chile GBC for this amazing opportunity, and I wish I was able to travel to see you all in person, but I'm so far in Colorado that it's a big effort, I guess, to make it happen. But hopefully, sometime this year, I'll be able to be in Chile and to meet you in person. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you.
Muchas gracias, Robert. Bueno, no lo hemos conversado, pero esperamos tenerte el próximo año en nuestra Chile Green Building Week en abril. Y creo que te vemos en Colombia, los que vamos a Construverde.
That's
Ahora
right.
en julio.
Voy a Colombia, voy a presentar en Colombia y les puedo prometer, voy a tratar de presentar en español. En
Pero
total.
no hay problema, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por tu gentileza siempre y el contacto está siempre abierto. Ya Robert ahí dejó su correo, puede ser también a través de nosotros. Así que muchas gracias nuevamente por acompañarnos hoy.
Gracias.
Bueno, y con eso